Strange New World success proves Star Trek needs a TNG prequel show. Star Trek: Strange New Worlds hit the ground running when it debuted in 2022, and its successful premise serves as evidence that a Star Trek: The Next Generation prequel show is long overdue. Although technically an offshoot of Star Trek Discovery, Strange New Worlds also serves as a direct prequel to Star Trek, the original series. Led by Anson Mount as Captain Christopher Pike, the Star Trek Strange New Worlds cast helps tell the story of the USS Enterprise A before Captain Kirk William Shatner took command of the vessel. Star Trek Strange New Worlds has been a huge success, which means it would only make sense for Star Trek The Next Generation to be next in line for the same treatment received by Star Trek, the original series. The days immediately before The Next Generation sit in an untapped part of the Star Trek timeline. So it would be exciting if the franchise added to its vast catalog of Star Trek TV shows that fleshed out this lost era. Star Trek needs a prequel spin-off showing Jean-Luc Picard's time as the USS Stargazer's captain, most known for serving as the captain of the USS Enterprise D. Patrick Stewart's Jean-Luc Picard actually commanded another vessel before Starfleet's flagship. Picard was the USS Stargazer's captain for over 20 years before transferring to the Enterprise. So there is a huge period that has rarely been addressed in Stewart stories throughout the decades. Although Picard's Star Trek timeline has already been extensively covered, the franchise has been very coy about many of the Stargazer's adventures while under his command. Therefore, it's time the Skyfi saga focused on a younger Captain Picard. The franchise has grown far more comfortable recasting even its most legendary figures, so it wouldn't be as surprising to see a new actor playing Captain Picard as it perhaps might have been a few years ago. Of course, Patrick Stewart would need to be replaced for a TNG prequel show, as he has long since aged out of playing Picard during his earlier years. However, the franchise has grown far more comfortable recasting even its most legendary figures, so it wouldn't be as surprising to see a new actor playing Captain Picard as it perhaps might have been a few years ago. Plus, showing Picard's time aboard the Stargazer would also finally reveal far more about Jack Crusher, Wesley's late father who served with Stewart's character during this era. While a Stargazer Star Trek show would be different from Strange New Worlds, the Enterprise's captain in Star Trek Strange New Worlds is essentially a brand new character, as Anson Mount is playing someone who had only ever been a relatively small part of the larger story. So, the spin-off teaches audiences a great deal not only about the USS Enterprise's pre-Kirk era, but also far more than ever before about the predecessor of William Shatner's Captain James T. Kirk. In a Stargazer show, Captain Picard would be the only real point of reference to TNG, but he would be a far more significant one than Pike is in Strange New Worlds. Furthermore, a Stargazer project would be far less restricted from a canonical perspective. The show would need to make sure Picard made it to the end so he could become the Enterprise's captain, and that would essentially be the only main story beat that would need to be addressed. Otherwise, there are 22+ years worth of narrative blank slate to play with. This also means that a Star Trek The Next Generation prequel would have about 4 times the number of years between itself and its parent show than there are between Star Trek Strange New Worlds and TOS. When Star Trek Strange New Worlds launched in 2022, it did more than breathe life back into the franchise. It reignited the very spirit of what made Star Trek an enduring cultural force. With its episodic storytelling, charismatic cast, and deep reverence for canon, Strange New Worlds proved that there's still bold new ground to cover in the final frontier, even in the past. And if Paramount Plus is paying attention, there's an obvious next step: a Star Trek The Next Generation prequel. It sounds like a risky proposition at first. TNG is sacred ground for many fans after all. But that was also true for the original series before Strange New Worlds dared to tread there. What made SNW work wasn't just nostalgia or slick production values. It was a creative vision that respected what came before while showing us what we never got to see: the everyday heroism of Pike's crew, the pre-Kirk dynamics of the Enterprise, and formative moments for familiar icons like Spock and Uhura. TNG is similarly ripe for that treatment. Despite being set in the 24th century, it left plenty of untapped narrative terrain behind it. What was the galaxy like in the 2 decades before Captain Picard took the center seat? What events shaped the Federation in the lead up to the encounter at Farpoint? What missions forged legends like Riker, Crusher, and Law Forge before they stepped aboard the Enterprise D? There are many ways to explore this era, but one especially compelling avenue would be following a younger Jean-Luc Picard during his time commanding the USS Stargazer. His 22 years aboard that ship are legendary within Star Trek lore, but woefully underexplored on screen. We know he was promoted to captain after the previous one died, and that the fateful Battle of Maxia cost him the Stargazer and left psychological scars that would define him. But we've never seen the full arc, his growth as a leader, the bonds with his first crew, the early challenges that set him on the path to becoming the man who would change the galaxy. Just imagine a series centered on the Stargazer, blending Strange New Worlds' episodic format with character-driven arcs that explore the moral dilemmas, diplomatic crises, and scientific wonders of a slightly rougher, more politically tense 24th century. The tone could be less polished than TNG's gleaming utopia, more frontier than paradise, with a Federation still scarred from the Cardassian border conflicts, Romulan Cold War tensions, and early Borg whispers. And it wouldn't just be a prequel, it would be a blueprint for the evolution of the ideals we see perfected in TNG. There's also the appeal of filling in the gaps for other iconic characters. A young Jack Crusher, best friend to Picard and husband to Beverly, could finally step into the spotlight. We could see a pre-Starfleet Wesley Crusher, maybe even glimpse Beverly's early medical career. And what about Geordi's time as an ensign or Riker's early postings before the Pegasus incident? These characters all had rich backstories hinted at, but rarely explored. Crucially, this wouldn't just be fan service. It's about continuing the legacy of Star Trek as a living, breathing mythology. Just as Strange New Worlds has deepened our understanding of the original series through smart, character-focused writing, a TNG prequel could provide fresh perspectives on stories we thought we already knew. We'd see how the seeds of TNG's signature values, diplomacy over violence, science over superstition, cooperation over ego, were planted in a more volatile time. The appetite is clearly there. Strange New Worlds struck a chord because it knew how to balance reverence with reinvention. It gave us fan-favorite characters while introducing new ones who felt instantly essential. It honored canon but wasn't afraid to push the envelope. And its success, both critically and with audiences, has proven that the prequel format works when it's done with care. With Picard having wrapped and Discovery concluding, Star Trek's future is once again open space. Rather than endlessly jumping forward in time, there's rich value in looking back, especially when it's in service of character, legacy, and continuity. A Stargazer series, or even a broader TNG-era prequel that follows multiple storylines in parallel, would provide both fresh stories and a connective thread for longtime fans. In the end, Star Trek has always been about charting the unknown, whether that means exploring strange new worlds or revisiting familiar ones with new eyes. If Strange New Worlds proved anything, it's that looking to the past doesn't mean repeating it. It means enriching it, expanding it, and reminding us why these stories endure. The next great frontier might just be the one that leads us to the dawn of the next generation. Would you like a version formatted for web or print publication?